going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the CrazyFaceUno podcast, where everyone has a story and everyone's story matters. What's your story? In the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, we want to let you all know that we'll be donating 100% of our sales and donations at CrazyFaceUno.com. That's CrazyFaceUno.com to the World Central Kitchen, founded by Chef Jose Andre. If you are not familiar with the World Central Kitchen or Jose Andre, please check them out and learn more about the amazing work they're doing around the world today. Together, we can defeat this invisible enemy. And with that said, I'm your host, Shane McNeely, and boy, are you in for a treat today. Please welcome my friend Katie Strand. Welcome, Katie.
Hi, Shane.
How's it going?
It's an interesting question in these times.
I know. It's wild west out there, I think.
It kind of is. It's unprecedented. Even my parents, who are 81 and 79, are like, "You've never seen anything like this in our lifetime." And I'm like, "Yeah, 1918 was before you were born."
Yeah.
Unlike most things in the modern era. My dad remembers getting a TV, but it's never been through a pandemic.
I know. It's
still wild.
It's still kind of surreal, though. It I don't know. It's a little bit more real than surreal now. But yeah, it's still kind of like, I've been saying this, and there's probably somebody I know, but at this point in time, like, I don't know of anyone that has been affected by it other than the obvious, that's caught the disease or caught COVID-19. And so, I don't know, it puts this literally like invisible enemy kind of image in your head.
It really does. And it's funny, a lot of people I know are like, in the film industry, because that's where I've worked most of my career, and they're like, well, there's lots of shows streamed, like they're all talking about some shows to watch, and they're all on hiatus. All of their shows are on hiatus. You asked me how I'm doing, and I actually skirted the question.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Talking about my parents, you noticed that, so I'm aware of that. So I'll just tell you that, it's an interesting thing, because I've heard different people say they're bored or whatever, and I know people are legitimately stressed about work and money and all of that.
Yeah.
Because I've been a freelancer, I kind of am used to having, uncertainty in my work. Even though it's not ideal.
For sure.
It's still just something I've grown accustomed to.
Yeah.
And I just finished working on a commercial remotely, so that was kind of interesting that I was doing a remote job while everything was starting to get shut down.
Yeah.
Like, I'm already working from home.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah, kind of works out.
Kind of works out. I was supposed to be in LA this week wrapping that commercial, and instead I stayed in Minneapolis, where I'm now based, and finished the job, and then I'm kind of like off work, but I have a little bit of money saved, because that's just how we do as freelancers. We save money when we work, and then we, usually most of my friends that do this kind of work, we kind of live modestly in between jobs, just to like, make ends meet between the gigs, but they usually come, for experience, and we have, decent resume and decent network.
Yeah.
So that's that's one aspect of this. The other thing is that, I've been meditating for a long time. That really, really helps, because I'm pretty comfortable, like, in aloneness or in quiet or in stillness. Sure.
Which most people aren't.
Well, it's an interesting thing, because most people aren't, and I've heard so many people say to me, I'm quoting, "I'm bad at meditating," and I'm like,
it takes practice.
Laugh, because I'm like, you can't really be bad at it. You either do it or you don't do it.
Yeah, but it also takes practice to, like, maybe they want more out of it than they feel like they're getting, potentially, or it's like they're not doing it for an hour and falling into some transcendental, like whatever, but it's
the expectation and what they experience is disparate. So they're like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to feel peace and like stillness. And I'm like, and I try to tell them, and I've taught this a little bit. I'm like, I know monks have been meditating for 20 years, like every day, and they still have the times when they sit and they feel restless. They have a monkey mind, as it's called. So like, just do it. Just sit. And part of the experience is being present to your mind being restless, your mind telling you, I don't want to sit still, this is dumb. Like, all that stuff is actually part of the whole thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I feel like it's a pretty potentially big opportunity for everybody to like get more comfortable in the stillness and to find inspiration in like not having like their schedule's booked out. Just
exactly. Yeah.
Waking to sleep. A lot of people's schedules are just booked out. They work during the day, then the kids at night, and then when the kids go to sleep, they do dishes or they do chores or they do work or whatever. It's like everyone's full all day long, which can be good and productive, but it can also be a little bit of a way to distract ourselves from what being present to the moment or whatever. So definitely. I don't need to get into the super ethereal kind of
hey, no worries, you're fine.
First thing, but the other piece to this that but I'm introducing your listeners to this is that I at 39 lost my husband. We were together 9 years and he died in 2017, and so that was like the hardest thing I've ever been through
I can imagine.
Put it mildly. It's like the hardest thing I've been through. What does that look like? Well, it was like daily sobbing breakdowns, dealing with doctors. It was a year of him in and out of hospital, all these procedures. He had kidney issues, and so that was what ultimately took his life. And the last year was really, really rough, really bad, because he kept surviving all these infections. But it was clear that the dialysis and having kidneys that don't work was just, his body was just too damaged from all of that. And people who I didn't know, people who haven't kind of been around that or don't understand it, dialysis is a poor substitute for kidneys. So it still will kind of clear out some of the acid that we get cleared through our urine and through the kidney process, but dialysis doesn't do as good a job of it. And so you have all these weird side effects.
Yeah.
And so those just kind of came to a head in 2017 with some neuropathy, with his actually losing circulation in his left foot especially, and they were talking about amputating that, and with an infection in his abdomen, and all these different things just kept happening that was just, and resulted in him dying in November. And so going through that and then having this experience now, it's sort of weirdly, I don't want to minimize anybody that's in the military. That's not part of my experience, but it was like I was battle tested with that really challenging experience. And now I'm like, this is so bad. We have to stay at home and go out and walk, and I have to mind my spending. I can't go out to a restaurant or a bar. Well, that's not a big deal, because when I'm
most of them are closed now anyway.
Yeah, they're all closed. When I'm being thrifty, I don't go out to eat anyway. I'm always making food at home.
Sure.
And I like to eat healthy. So in a weird way, I was prepared for this, but I didn't want to be. I wouldn't have ever wanted that experience, because I had it. It prepared me for this sort of challenging experience. I'm curious what's going to happen. I'm really curious how long it'll last, how many people get it, how it impacts the medical system. And that's one of the biggest concerns people have, because our medical system doesn't have the quote-unquote beds to accommodate if everybody gets this, which it looks like at some point everybody will, because of how it spreads, and it's asymptomatic for so long and all that stuff. But I'm doing I'm generally, it's been 2.5 years since Marcus died. I'm oddly happy. It's that's my baseline. And sometimes I feel sad and I feel grief, and I go into that, and then I've learned to just not resist it. I did get a degree in psychology, so that really helped me kind of do a lot of my inner exploration of my mental and emotional states. But I go into that grief and sadness, I cry for a bit, and then I kind of let go, and then it passes. It's temporary. So then I kind of come back to this sort of that tree is really pretty. I can kind of find things in the moment to be grateful for.
Well, and that's the funny thing about grief. I mean, right? I mean, there's so many pieces to it, but it sounds like you're in a healthy place. I mean, that's the dream, right? The feelings don't go away. Anybody that's lost someone, you don't forget them. You don't forget the memories that you had with them. I mean, you think about them. Things trigger your mind, and there are moments that maybe you are sad, But it's being able to see through the sadness, to see the beauty in what you are experiencing, I think is a sign of healthy grieving, and just part of life, and to be completely honest. I mean, it's
nobody that's lived more than I don't even know how many years, but anyone who's in adulthood has probably lost somebody,
Absolutely.
And as we get older and older, that increases. My parents have lost a bunch of friends now at their age in life. And so I'm writing, because I'm a filmmaker, but I'm a songwriter too, and so I'm writing a show with songs and storytelling about what I went through, in part because I'm what I love about storytelling, whether it's in form of books or podcasts like this or movies, is I like, relating to people's experiences. It's what a lot of us like, or the voyeuristic aspect of reality TV, or, oh God,
definitely.
That's not me, that's a hot mess. But like, I want to share about this experience because part of it is like finding gratitude for who he was and our relationship.
Honoring
even though
him.
I miss him and I'd rather have him here healthy and well. I wouldn't wish him here to be really sick again. That sucks,
Yeah, for sure.
But like honoring him and his memory, because he was a teacher. He taught martial arts, he taught meditation, he taught qigong, he was a health coach. And so like, it's weird because like one of the things you talked about is like you're happy but then you're sad, and like that's healthy grief. Part of it for me is like what I would not have known if I hadn't experienced is that sometimes just purely happy moments have a sadness component to it, because it's like I wish he was here to experience this, so I could share this with him.
Right.
This beautiful day or this beautiful moment, or like when
your happiness, your joy.
Like, it's like my joy has a twinge of sadness, because it's like I wish I could share this with him. He was oddly one of the happiest people I've ever known, given that he had kidney failure. And so like for him, like forgiveness was huge. Like he wasn't a grudge holder. So he had a few friends and clients over the years where they would have, different, falling out or separation or whatever. And he would always just be like, okay, when you're ready to talk, because they would get mad at him because he was their coach, and he'd be honest with them. This as a coach of sports, that your players, your students will get mad at you, and sometimes it's different when you're in a school setting, but like his were all adults that just had clients and martial arts students, and so they'd sometimes get mad at him for telling him like, hey, if you don't clean this up, this might go bad for you.
Right.
Behavior. They get mad and go away for a few months or years, and they come back around like, oh dude, you were right. He's like, hey, it's good to see you again. Like, he didn't hold a grudge. And I realized that part of his happiness was like forgiving that he got dealt this hand of like, oh, your kidneys failed for no reason. Like the doctors couldn't figure out why. It was just a weird. I think it was my theory is it was an infection that went undetected, that went to spread to his kidneys, like a urinary tract infection, which aren't that common for men. And he just didn't have symptoms. And then years later, he was throwing up, or whatever, months, throwing up. Just couldn't keep food down. 3-4 days of that, he thought he had a really bad flu or stomach flu, went into the hospital, and they were like, your kidneys are failing. He's like, no, that's not possible. I'm a healthy guy. I don't do any of the things that would make my kidneys fail. I don't do drugs. I don't, these different things. I'm not diabetic. It wasn't an accident. Like traumatic things can have your kidneys challenged and fail, and he had none of those. So they couldn't figure it out, and so then he just was like, through his way of being, his years of meditation prior to, he just like, okay, how can I find a way to make my life beautiful and give back? So he then would always, like, he definitely got paid to like teach martial arts and help coach clients on health or weight loss or whatever. But any kidney patient, any kidney dialysis patient that came to him for like just general like health nutrition coaching, because they obviously still had their doctors, he wasn't replacing that. It was just more of a health coach for like nutrition and stuff. And so he didn't charge them. He's like, you can donate if you want, but I won't charge you because you're a kidney patient.
Wow, that's cool.
He had won that, like, she like won an award at her dialysis center or whatever city she was in, somewhere in Arizona, I think, because her numbers got so good. Like they thought they were gonna have to do surgery, and they didn't, because he'd like changed her diet. He's like, I only learned that because of my experience, so I'm able to give back from my experience, and that's something that I can feel grateful for, and that I get to help people in a way that I wouldn't have. So he like kept finding gratitude, and like you'd think, he wasn't really religious, but he was very spiritual, and like it'd be so justified to be angry at God or just angry at whatever for being dealt this hand. And he just instead was like, okay, how can I make my life beautiful? And so we had a relationship for almost 9 years. And I sometimes joke, I'm like, I had a decade with the guru, because he was just a really pretty profound person in my life. And so like I keep leaning into the gratitude of that, and then that helps to, just I don't know, manage the sadness, just like to really feel it, and then go, I learned so much from him. Who I am today for sure. Is because of his impact on my life. So absolutely.
Katie, man, I love it. We're like 15 minutes in, and we're just going for it.
About just shallow things.
Well, let me start off with this. So You and I met for the first time this year, like maybe a month ago or so. I mean, it hasn't been too long. Well, probably a little longer than that. But you and one of my friends and my former boss were kind of in the area and coming through, and you ended up staying with me and my wife, and we got to catch up then. And you were like, yeah, let's do it. Like, we were hoping to be able to, do a podcast or kind of hang out and spend a little more time with each other. But I had to go home. I had some family stuff. And it's funny you mentioned kidney issues, which that's what my grandfather was dealing with. And Katie, I left the next day before you guys even woke up. We bought a ticket at like 11:30 at night. And I was gone the next morning at like, I don't know, 7-8 o'clock. I don't remember what time it was, but he was dealing with some kidney issues, and he's still alive, still working through all of that. We can chat about that later. I don't want to just spoil it.
This is your grandfather?
Yeah, he's in a nursing home. He's in the end stages of his life, and they had.
Did you got to have some time with him? Was he coherent?
Yeah, he was.
Good.
As much as he could be. He's got a lot of different health issues, but he knew I was there, and I got to say my goodbyes while I was there, and that's good. It's important. It's meaningful, and it's always good. I always want to be the person that people can lean on, and especially my family. And it was really good to be able to go home. I spent 2 weeks there, just kind of helping my family out and just being present. Sometimes I think has a lot of benefits, and it just helps people, kind of comfort people and relieve a little stress, just to know that somebody's got your back and somebody's there for you. So we met then, and you have had some. I've done a little research, Katie. I know a little bit about you, but I don't know a lot. But you've done some cool projects. You've had your hands on some fun projects and fun things over the years. Fill us in.
My origin story instead of my most recent traumatic experience.
Man, well, we're gonna get into the origin story for sure. But maybe in the last like several years. I mean, I don't know how far back. See, normally, so this is the interesting part. Katie, you and I kind of tease out from my friends and people that I haven't talked to in like 10 years. And I'm like, oh, fill me in on the last like 10 years of your life, And then we dig into their childhood and we work back to present day. So I'm like, I don't know how far to go back necessarily, Katie, but go back as far as you think is necessary. But would you mind kind of sharing with the listeners, you touched on a little bit in the beginning here, but some of the different projects you're a part of now and have been a part of maybe in the more recent past?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. So, let's see here. Well, people love this one, so I'll share about this. This is kind of fun. So sure. I worked on a Deadpool 2 commercial.
Nice.
In 2018, and that was the one where Deadpool, or Ryan Reynolds playing Deadpool, was on a unicorn. It was a unicorn, a commercial with a unicorn, which my friends who have kids loved. They were like, what, unicorn? It was a white horse, like a painted pink mane, and had, of course, a fake horn. But that was a commercial I worked on, and it was cute. One of the cute things about it was that I was working directly with Ryan. I was the talent producer, talent handler, and Ryan came up to me. He's like, "Hi, my name's Ryan," and I was like, "Yeah, everybody knows who you are." Like, I'm sure in his mind, because he's a funny person, and I worked with him, on that shoot, and he was very lovely to work with. It's a variety of experiences you have with people on.
I was gonna say that as well. I've heard some stories from friends and people that are in similar roles. So
Yep. So he was very pleasant, and I'm sure in his mind he's like, I'm not going to be the jerk who just assumes everybody knows who I am.
Right.
And the other thing is, out in public, what I've learned over the years is that people get celebrities' names wrong.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Like especially if you have like a similar profile, like if you're if you're African American actor.
Yeah.
Like, people often call you by another, like, Samuel L. Jackson will get Lawrence Fishburne and vice versa.
Oh, gosh.
Just because people just associate people who are similar in their minds. So there's a lot of that.
Humanity is, we're rough.
Mitigating that. But, so that was kind of a riot to work on. That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then, let's see, I've worked on a bunch of PBS documentaries over the years and doing camera stuff. And
sure.
That's been really, really, really fun. Oddly enough, I find that actually documentaries are the most interesting to work on. And you kind of wouldn't think that because and I haven't worked on super duper big budget movies, but I worked on some budget TV shows for Fox and NBC and stuff. And those are fine, and some scripted stuff, and that's great too. But with the scripted stuff, you hear the same scene over and over again,
Right.
So as crew, it may not be that interesting because you're kind of just hearing the same scene, and they do a turn where they do it from the other side or the other, and they have to relight. It's not a
story. It's like a little piece,
it's like a little vignette, and then it puts it all together in editing.
Right, and I don't think people realize it's made fun of enough the process that I think people kind of understand it, but I don't think they quite understand the process of filmmaking in general.
Sure.
Of how it's to produce a quality film, quality piece of content that's visually stimulating is difficult. It takes a lot of work. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of there's a lot of work that goes into it behind the scenes.
Totally, and it's one of the interesting aspects of it is, we as viewers we see what's in front of the camera, but if you turn around, if you're we're there in person and turned around, there's all these people that are behind the scenes, behind the camera, making it happen. Everybody from craft services, what's craft services? That's the food stand that you get to have snacks in between your meals, because meals are their own thing. And we almost always, especially for anything budgeted or union, we get our meals paid for, which is kind of a nice bonus. So we get our meals covered on set because you can't really leave.
Yep.
And so
to lighting, to sound.
Lighting, craft services, which is the food, the snack food. The sound, the grips, which are all the hardware, and the dollies, the gaffers for lighting.
Right.
Art
gaffers. That's a fun one you slipped in there. That I guarantee that the crew that's listening, there's a good group of people from the nonprofit that I used to work for that know exactly what that is, that are probably listening. But there's a good chance that a bulk of the people that are listening have no idea what gaffing is or gaff tape.
And I don't know the etymology of the word, actually. I should know this, but I don't.
It's the tape. It's a special tape. So.
Well, for sure, it's a special tape. Does it come from the tape, and then that's?
Yeah, I think that's it. It's just
here's some of my favorite terms.
It's extra sticky duct tape, but it doesn't. Yeah. It's masking tape, but sticky like duct tape. Yeah, and it's super expensive.
And it's $15 a roll.
Yeah, it's super expensive.
Seriously, $15 minimum a roll.
Yeah.
And so we have this gaff tape thing, and all maybe that's where it came from. And then the person that's then they have their second in that department is usually called a best boy, which I think is hilarious. And it doesn't matter if it's a female or male. It's just that's the title. That's actually the title of the role, and that's the second. So the gaffing is lighting, and lighting is obviously super important. Like if you shoot something just in your own life with your phone, the lens is amazing, and we have wonderful, amazing technology now compared to what 20 years ago even, or definitely more than 50 years ago. Holy crap! With film and all of that, now we have this digital. We kind of take for granted how accessible everything is. Taking pictures and being able to share pictures. You have to get things developed.
Yep.
And if you lost your roll,
I missed that.
You're screwed. I know.
I miss that a lot.
Weird, how it's facilitated impatience, but
there's something special about that process when you were young.
Yeah.
The newest generation, they have no idea. They haven't really ever got to experience that. But the idea of going on vacation, you had your disposable cameras that you'd buy, a pack of 3 or whatever, a pack of 5, and you'd save those cameras back, and you didn't know for a month or two, that you even what your pictures were going to be, if they were good.
Totally. You didn't know, and then you'd get doubles if you had friends that you wanted to share with, and then you'd have a bunch that were crappy, and you'd still get doubles of those. These are just trash. And
it'd be 27 pictures or something like that, 32 pictures a roll.
32 pictures on a roll. Yeah. Oh my good Lord. And it's so different now, but so gosh, we are tangential, and you're totally supporting my habits of being tangential.
Yeah.
But so there's all these different roles. I've worked a bunch. It's a little bit odd, but I've worked a lot in production where we do more of the logistics, production managing, coordinating, those kinds of jobs, where we're kind of responsible for making sure all the pieces come together.
Sure.
From hiring crew to some of the research to
clearance.
To like basically speaking to clearances, to speaking to all the heads of department to make sure everyone's like got what they need, or as far as equipment, or minding the budget, all of that. But then I've also worked in camera department quite a bit, like for Pbs Docs, which has been wonderful because then it's a much smaller crew. It feels more intimate. Like I did American Masters with Carol Burnett and Bob Newhart, and I did this PBS series. It's 8 parts, and I'm not in front of my computer. I'm just talking on my phone, so I'm not distracted. But it's called Sound Breaking.
Okay.
It might be called Record Breaking. And I always forget what the title is because when we were filming it, it was called On Record. And that was the working title. And then they renamed it when they released it. And so my brain was like, what?
Yeah.
So anyway, but it's an 8-part series that George Martin, who is the producer for the Beatles, was like his passion project at the end of his life. And I think his son took over because he passed away like during production. So they shot some in London, but I was part of the LA crew. And we got to interview Tom Petty.
Wow.
Before he passed, we got to interview Quincy Jones, Rick Rubin, who people who don't know who he is, but people who know who he is are like, holy crap, for Rick Rubin. Like, he produced everybody from the Beastie Boys to Adele. Like, he's just has this Metallica, like, massive career of multi-genre, which is not that common. A lot of people that are producers, like, say, a rock producer will only produce rock music because that's just what they're known for. That's what they're good at. That's their niche. This guy is like the Midas touch. Like, whatever he touches usually wins a Grammy. Like, he produced Johnny Cash's final album, which was just heartbreaking if you heard it. Like, it's just amazing. He does covers of all these people from Nine Inch Nails to, I don't even know, Soundgarden, or whatever bands he covered. It was just like his whole life experience was just like on every song of whatever he was singing. It was just incredible. So we got to meet him. He was incredible. Jimmy Iovine, who is Dr. Dre's collaborator and kind of partner with Beats and stuff. So we got to interview him. Cool. So we got to interview a ton of people. That was a really beautiful experience. Working on those kind of documentaries, and then I'll work on commercials like the Deadpool one. I just was working on a commercial for USAA that I can't talk about because I signed an NDA.
Nice, which is pretty common, right? I mean, that's pretty normal.
I have signed so many NDAs I can't even keep track. When I sometimes coach people, we'll set up an NDA together, and I'm like, this is no problem. Like, I have no problem not talking about this because that's just what I'm used to. Like, that's my default. But what's interesting is my biggest NDA that I can talk about now because it broke in the news was right at the time that Marcus was dying. I was able to work a little bit here and there just to bring in some money, and we had a little bit of savings, and then we had some donations from his students and from our family and friends that just help us get through all this really challenging hospitalizations and stuff. Yeah. And he did have health insurance, so that really made an impact too. We just kind of living expenses, food, all that. But so about a month or so, maybe 2 months before he died, I was on an interview that was conducted by Ronan Farrow, who is a journalist. Right. He's Mia Farrow's son. He's a lovely human. And he did a shadow interview with a woman. A shadow interview is where they're not revealed who they are. Sure. It's just the outline of the person, and like you have to light it a certain way and shoot it a certain way. And then they adjust their voice in editing. And so this was a huge NDA that I signed because it was one of the people that had been had a negative experience, I'll just call it that, with Weinstein.
Gotcha.
And so he was one of the people that, one of the journalists that revealed that story. And so that was one of the jobs I worked on, and I didn't tell anybody. I mean, I didn't even tell Marcus. Yeah. And like the funny thing is,
what's coming, but like.
here's my dark humor. He would have taken it to the grave, like, very soon, but like I didn't even tell him because I was like, I need to like not tell anybody about this. That's my NDA. But holy crap, was that a huge story? Yeah, for sure. It was a huge story. And what was interesting is they revealed to me that this was like the 8th or something. I don't know the numbers, but like it was not the 1st or 2nd or 4th. Yeah, crazy. It was like the 8th lawsuit that had been attempted. And so Weinstein and his lawyers were a bit smug. They were like, yeah, whatever. Like, it's not gonna touch us. And it actually, as we all know now, it did. And I think he recently got a sentenced.
Yeah, pretty hefty sentence, I believe. So
pretty hefty sentence, yeah.
And he's also tested positive for the coronavirus. Just stating the facts.
Wait, who did?
Weinstein.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that in the news. Well, yeah. I'm not watching the news as much. I'm taking in very deliberate information in the news because it's pretty intense to watch the news all the time, so I don't do that.
I hit the highlights, but I'm on Twitter, so I saw it on Twitter.
There you go.
But,
there you go, the highlights. So that was one of my longest, my beefiest NDAs was that Weinstein interview that I did.
Yeah.
As a second camera on that, but that was pretty interesting. Most people want to hear about Nanking because it won an Emmy. That was back in 2007, I think, or 2008. And I was actually one of the first hires after the directors. I was one of the producers, and I did a ton of research on that. I actually kind of like research. It sort of is a healthy way to express my mild OCD.
Sure. What does that look like? When you say research, like what is it that is it just stuff that you're finding? Does somebody give you like a paper and be like, hey, we need to know this stuff? Or is this like, hey, research team goes after it and they create that? Right. Or what does that look like?
So for filmmaking, obviously it's different than like what they do in medicine or in biology where you're in a lab. So for us, we started with the book, which is what inspired the one of the producer that basically funded this project. He read this book called The Rape of Nanking by Iris Chang and said, I want to make a documentary about this. And so he hired the director, Bill Guntag, to direct this documentary. And Bill and I had been working together on other projects, so he hired me as one of the producers to help put together the team and sort of create this documentary. And so the book was the beginning, and then we basically, because it was an historical documentary, it was a lot like history research would look, whether it was academic or somebody writing a book. Yeah. But it was specifically for a documentary. And so we dug through historical archives and got from several different places. The National Archives, of course, is one of the biggest archive resources in the world and in this country especially. And then there's a Methodist organization, because one of the people that was there that was a missionary from the United States was affiliated with the Methodist Church, so their letters were archived in the Methodist archives. I want to say that's in Georgia. National Archives is in D.C. And so I had researchers on my team in all these different locations that would work. We'd even hire them for like a week to just go and be there every day and look through microfilm and microfiche and stuff like that, because all this stuff is not online. Even now, 10 years later, it's probably still not all. Everything that's not online is contrary to popular belief. And so it was also looking through film footage, because there's some archive footage around, like newsreels back then, this is 1937, 38, were often played before movies. Yeah. And so it was like looking through some of those old films. And then we were connecting with the Nanking Museum in Nanking, China, where we shot. I was there for I think 5 weeks. We shot for about 4. I went out a week ahead of time to just prep, and I was there with my with our Chinese producer, who's from Shanghai, so she was my interpreter, and then we hired interpreters so the Americans could communicate with the Chinese. Yeah. We were not all fluent in Mandarin, not remotely. And so that was a fascinating experience. But the research, that's kind of, so it looks like a ton of reading, some looking at footage, and then so we did get nominated nominated for an Emmy in research, and people don't even know this is a category, but it's outstanding achievement in a craft research, I think.
Interesting.
Craft research. And so we got nominated for an Emmy. We didn't win, but we won for outstanding achievement in a craft historical documentary.
Wow, cool.
That category.
That's really cool. So congratulations.
Thank you. The film won for that, but we got nominated for research. And I think maybe they don't really tell you. There's like, oh, you got nominated, but I believe that we got nominated because one of the people that I ended up connecting with was a gentleman named, a really lovely professor at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, named Suping Liu, who had basically had the largest database of research on the rape of Nanking in the United States. Wow. And he was a Chinese-American man, and I found him, one of the ways I've found to do research is you got to look through the bibliographies. And so through several of the books we were using for research, I saw his name in his book, which is more of an academic book, not a book that you find at, you know, any kind of bookstore that would be popular, you know.
Yeah.
And so I found his book and his name and basically cold called him. And he, because of what we were doing with the documentary, let me come and visit him. And we did thank him in the credits, and he let us use all of his research material. And we ended up having a larger database on the rape of Nanking than the museum in China. And so I think that's part of why we got nominated. And I'm a little bit like a bloodhound with like research. I like to dig into stuff. Like I said, my mild and undiagnosed OCD really is useful in this, because I just get like a little obsessive. I'm like, okay, I gotta dig more into this.
Yeah.
What's this angle? And I want to dig into that. Like,
right.
I probably could have gone into journalism. It's like documentaries is really closely related. A lot of people just cross over. But you know, it's weird. I was in high school when the internet came out, and it was very, very beginning, in the 90s. And late 90s, and I remember going, this might make journalism uncertain. So I ended up going into communications and filmmaking and playing music. So I wanted to play music, but I didn't want to necessarily get a degree in music, because what the heck do you do with that? So I got a communications degree, which felt more practical, and I enjoyed it. You know, I did some filmmaking in college, and then got a job with like NBC out of college on an unscripted show that was filming in San Diego, where I was going to school. And so that kind of got my foot in the door. And then I had a friend who was a musician who hired me to work on an MTV Video Music Awards, which I've done about, I don't even know, I think I've done about 4 or 5 of those in the dressing room department.
Yeah. The rest is history. So just kind of opened the door, didn't it?
History, yes. Yeah. Like those two things, the NBC job, which I got because I'd interned at a production company and had some experience in my resume, and then my friend who was a musician that worked for MTV as a freelancer brought me onto that. So those two kind of just kept generating more work, because then you meet people on the jobs and all that. And then, you know, life is so interesting, because we can make plans, and then of course what really happens is maybe like some percentage related to what the plans are. So I definitely didn't plan to be a widow at, 39. But, I met Marcus in 2008. Yeah, 2008. So it was about a year after Nanking. I was in grad school, or finished grad school. I was getting my psychology degree. And so then I kept working in film and TV, but I also spent some time as a teacher. I was developing my own, music stuff, and he was, working, teaching martial arts and clients. So we had kind of it was pretty beautiful partnership, because he would help me with music ideas. I'd like sometimes would apprentice teach for him, because I'd been training in martial arts for I think 7 years at that point. And he said, well, you're now at the level you can apprentice teach under me. So we taught some martial arts together, which was fun.
That's cool.
But like, it's not out of nowhere. My dad was a football coach growing up, so I was around athletics and all that. So wait, this is totally this is non-linear storytelling right now.
Yes.
So let's see.
But it's okay. Let's go. Let's go back. Yeah, let's go back. Okay. So
I was born in Duluth, Minnesota.
Okay.
Yep. And my parents, one of my jokes, because this is going to be a tangential again. I'm sorry. I'm tired, but it's not.
You're fine.
Good. So I worked on a festival called Catalyst in 2019. I was one of the producers of that.
I've heard of Catalyst.
And that was in Duluth. Yeah, it was in my hometown of Duluth. And it had originally been in LA, then it was in Vermont for a few years, and then it moved to Duluth, and it's one of the only episodic festivals. So meaning, if you want to do a movie, there's tons of festivals to go to, where you can submit your 30-minute film, or your 8-minute film, or your hour-and-a-half film, and submit it to this festival and get it shown, and maybe get it bought, maybe make some money off of it and get distribution or whatever. But there aren't that many festivals for people who want to make a series. Like, so if you write an episode, the first episode, or if you make a first episode, you can submit it to Catalyst and have the potential for it to get made into a series.
Nice.
And so that's what Catalyst is. So I connected with the executive director of Catalyst, and was like, hey, I worked in LA for years, and I'm from Duluth. Like, I want to be involved. And so I got involved with that. And so part of what helped with that is that my parents are from Duluth, both of them born there.
Yeah.
And my little joke is that my parents are demi-celebrities in Duluth, because they both grew up there. My mom was valedictorian of her high school class, or one of the valedictorians. I think they had multiples at the time. And then she was cheerleading captain, and my dad was a football star. And so they both got full scholarships to go to the UMD, University of Minnesota Duluth, which most people only know because of hockey, if you're a hockey fan.
Yep.
But like, and Duluth is like seriously like 3 hours from Canada. Like, it's really north.
Right.
You know, it's right at the tip of Lake Superior. So it's cold. And that's part of why I left. I'm like, it's too cold. I'm going to San Diego. So
can't blame me there. I love San Diego.
Right? It's a beautiful place. So both my parents, high school, college, and then they both became public school teachers. So then my dad estimates he taught over 10,000 people in his career. My mom taught and then was home for a bit when we were kids and then went back to teaching. They both retired as teachers, public school. And so they have, it's just this bevy of students over the years that are now, you know, adults and, you know, 60, some of them, because my parents both started teaching in their 20s.
Yeah.
And so they just know a lot of people. So for Catalyst, we had like 5 major venues that were both for screenings, but also for like meetings or events. And 3 of them were run or owned by people my dad had coached.
Oh, wow.
So it's like 50% of our venues my dad has a direct connection to from like 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Sure.
And so me having the family connection really paid off for like connecting and helping build trust in Duluth. So I got involved with Catalyst, and so part of it was like kind of full circle. Like, I've been out in LA all these years. I'm like, oh, I can bring that experience and apply it to like my hometown and, you know, bring this festival here. And the long-term vision is to bring filmmaking to Duluth. And there's some challenge with Minnesota with incentives. So anybody listening to this, we would love to have incentives in Minnesota to bring the film industry to our state, in part because it's just such a beautiful revenue generator and job builder for the state. It's like a lot of blue-collar jobs, people gaffing and doing grip work, and our department in Transpo, which is Teamsters, you know. But so that's where I'm from. I left when I was 16 to go to the Arts High School, which is a school in Minneapolis that is a residential if you're from out of town. Otherwise, if you're local, you can just commute. Arts High School, and I was in the music department there, though now I'm like, I should have been in the media department since I went in filmmaking. Oh, one little cute side note. In my elementary school in Duluth, all the students got a job. Like, you know, whether it was cleaning the chalkboards or, you know, working in the library, everyone had like service that they would do. And I think it was like a couple hours a week, crossing guard, whatever. But like, it totaled a few hours a week. It was just part of the school. I don't know if they still do it in elementary schools, but we did that. But like, some students, for whatever reason, were picked early. So like, it was always in 6th grade you'd start doing that, like right around 11, 12, which is about appropriate to have responsibility. Yeah. But for some reason, me and another kid, I don't remember his name, but I will eventually, started in 4th grade, we got assigned to be the AV kids, which meant at that time that we had to lace film projectors and facilitate, which is super nerdy, like not good for social, you know, for social standing. But I had to learn how to lace a projector and show films in my classes, not knowing that someday I'd go to the film industry. Yeah. So it whet your appetite, I guess. It did. Well, I always love storytelling, and my dad loves film, so that was, my mom. It's always helpful. Them, but like, it's always helpful. And I grew up on like certain films that like really had an impact on me being a singer, like, you know, The Sound of Music or The Wizard of Oz and Annie were 2 of my favorites as a kid. So I would sing those songs at every family function. So I was growing up singing, and then the AV on this super nerdy AV thing is just like, oh god, it's so funny. Like, I was an AV kid that is social suicide, but I was like, okay, I'll do this job. Like, I didn't know any better. You know, I was 10. Yeah. On this note, how would you describe your childhood? What was it like for you? Oh gosh. You know, it's funny because no childhood is without challenge, right? Because we're just like new to the world and trying to make sense of things. Yeah. So mine was challenging primarily because I was pretty sensitive, like emotionally sensitive, I think. You know, I was pretty like, I don't know, just like sweet and sensitive. And so my older brother was a bit of a bully, so that made it hard. But my parents, based on the profile I just shared with you, were actually pretty lovely people. And so they were very kind and both well-loved as teachers. So I had like these pretty wonderful parents, but then a big brother who was a bit of a bully. We're very close now, by the way. So that's awesome. Even if you listen to this, you'd be like, yeah, it might have been a little bit of a bully. Like, you would kind of admit it, you know? Yeah. But like, we're super close now, which is beautiful. And honestly, one of the great things about my childhood is I got to try a lot of stuff. So even though we were pretty tight financially, because my dad was teaching and coaching, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom once they started having kids, that's what they decided and what they wanted to do. So, like, the budget was tight, on a one teacher salary, and I was one of 4 kids. So by the time I came along third, they were on a tight budget,
Right.
And so, but we had hand-me-downs, and we had, like, community because of my parents being teachers. We'd get cross-country skis from a friend that we could use. And so I learned how to cross-country ski and downhill, all those winter sports, downhill ski, cross-country ski, ice skate. Like, we had a lot of activities because my parents are both physical people. My mom's a dancer and a pretty good golfer, and my dad's like, anything with the ball I'm good at. So, like, basketball, softball, football was his favorite sport. He didn't play tennis, though, but that has a ball too. But golf, they both golf now. And so I had really physically active parents, and so that was part of what defined my childhood, which I really liked, because then it wasn't hard when I was 14. I could just ski. We're gonna go down skiing. Okay, well, I started doing that when I was 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
So that I really liked that, and then my mom being a musician and a singer and a piano player, we all played instruments, but my older siblings didn't take to it like I did, and then my younger brother also played piano, and so I played piano growing up. Did a lot of different physical activities, including dance, and I think that's really big. And it's weird because it's like, now I see it as an adult and with my friends, because I don't have kids. So my friends, it's like, there's a lot of carton kids around.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
But with my neighborhood, we were riding our bikes to softball. You know what I mean? It wasn't as much the parents being chauffeurs. We were a little more self-sufficient back then with bicycles and stuff like that, and I think it's different now.
For sure.
But I think if you can get your kids active, I loved that aspect of it, because it let me try stuff without it being, well, you're going to be an Olympic skier. No, it's just like, this is what we do. It's wintertime. We're going to ski.
Yeah.
What
else do you have to do?
You get stuck inside all day and just be like, kind of get cabin fever.
Right.
We'd go outside and we'd play. I mean, my mom would literally send us out to the yard, and we would make. My friends in Southern California, where I lived for many, many years, they're like, oh my God, you had so much winter. I was like, yep. We didn't make snowmen. We made snow everything. Like, we made snowmen. My neighbor made a snow job of the hut. It's not that hard. He's just kind of a big blob.
That's awesome. What did you say you wanted to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a singer.
Singer?
I wanted to be to be a singer-songwriter, rock star.
That's awesome.
And so that didn't totally come to fruition, but I'm still doing it, which I like. I'm still writing songs and singing, and this show that I'm writing a show of storytelling and music together, and this actually really feels like such a good fit for me, because even though I love music and songwriting, it also felt like one piece of the pie for like what I like to do. I love filmmaking, and so this feels like the whole pie, that I have a show that I'm writing that has storytelling and music, and then that's like the 15 or 20 minute short that I'm like working on to start.
Sure.
And then the whole show will be an hour to probably an hour and a half. We'll have some video. We'll have some media, because I have video of Marcus, because I'm a filmmaker.
Oh, nice.
Making video of him, teaching, and even going through the process when he was sick. He's like, you should document this. Like, this is relevant to share eventually. And I didn't understand, of course, at the time, but wow. So it'll be multimedia, and then I'll do some music, I'll do some storytelling, and then eventually I'd like to make it bigger too, because everyone, like you're saying, everyone experiences loss in their lives. And so if I can share a little bit of my story about how, we got to feel those feelings of grief and sadness, but there's also ways to really let that, for me, it's like I've found ways to transmute that into, love and inspiration and creativity and joy and connection, and like, in a way, it's like I love the people, I have some long-term friends, 20, 30 years that I've known people, and I'm like, I love them even harder because I lost Marcus.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just changes how you relate to the world.
Oh, completely. And I love like this medium as well, and the way I, kind of bring people along through this story of, it's the origin story, like you kind of mentioned in the beginning. It's this is what I'm doing. this is where, you know, I came from, this is my childhood, this is my middle school, high school, this is the decisions I made to go this direction and kind of led me to who I am. And you get some stories and tidbits along the way. And I look at that and I think about the different ways that, you know, we could, you know, you look at this medium in a sense of what I'm doing with CrazyFaceUno. And I love that because it is documenting a part of your life. And I think it'll also be fun to look back years and years and years from now, you know, of some of these stories.
Yes.
We all have those fun, like, things, like, whether it's a paper we wrote in college or some video or something we wrote in elementary school or high school, and something you see and you're like, oh man, like, look how much I've grown up. Like, look how much I've changed. Look how much my mentality's changed. And I think it's cool to have these pieces that kind of are a piece of individuals, you know, it's a person's story. To be able to look back on, I think it's kind of cool, and there's so many different directions and things you could do with this concept, I think. But
I agree with you. I mean, it's a modern radio.
For sure.
And when you first told me about the show, I was like, yes, I love this idea, because what you can find when you talk to people is that everyone has an interesting story within their lives.
Everyone,
and it's experience.
And it's funny because I get, you know, I've sent out a bunch. I used to have I've sent out a ton of invites to different people, and a common thing that I get back from a lot of people is like, I don't know if I have a story to tell. And
You're like, you know the title of my podcast?
Yeah, I'm like, I kind of like shake well, it's in like everything I invite them to too, but I like kind of shake my head a little bit, and I'm like, no, you're wrong. Like, give me a chance. Like, give me a chance to show you that you have a story, you know? And I think it's people.
I love that.
People, I think,
That's
are
so cute. You're like, yes, actually, exactly what you said is why I did my show. People think they don't have an interesting story, and everybody does.
Yeah, I can promise you.
Have you ever talked to somebody where you're like 10 minutes and you're like, yeah, you don't have an interesting story?
No, I've had people.
Never.
I've had the opposite. I'm jabbing at you, Katie, because you're just like a fountain. But like, I've had people the opposite of you, where it's like pulling teeth to get information out of them.
Reveal.
Yeah, or like it's just like they answer it as in like a yes or no question, like yep, or like yeah, I've done that, you know, and you're like, cool, you want to elaborate a little bit more, like.
Sure.
And so those are.
You have to coerce out the story, but it's not that they don't have one; it's that they are reticent to share for some reason.
Yeah, and those are generally the hardest ones for me, and those don't come along very often. But yeah, every once in a while, Katie, you're probably. I'm approaching my 100th podcast.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah, I put out today was number 93, and I've got a few in the bank. So I'm approaching 100, which is kind of cool. You know, I've backed off. I was doing 2019. I did 3 a week, and it's just a lot. It's aggressive, and it's more the scheduling. It's not doing the podcast. It's scheduling. It's coordinating. It's getting people's schedules, calendars.
All the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah. I mean, even like I've done it
Are
where.
you your own gaffer? Do you gaff for your own podcast?
I do it all. Yeah, I'm the one and the mini of CrazyFaceUno. But yeah, it's fun though.
CrazyFaceUno. How'd you get this title?
Yeah, it's my nickname in college was Crazy Face.
No.
And when I was kind of exploring, I was so I played soccer in college, and I was on the bus in preseason. We were doing 2-3 days stuff, and I don't know, we were on our way to the practice field on this bus, and there's an English guy on our team, and there's like a bunch of them, but he like looked at me, his name was John, and he was like, man, you have a really crazy face, like you make some really crazy faces, that's what we're gonna call you, Crazy Face. And it just stuck.
The expressions of your face.
Yeah, well, Crazy Face, I don't know what his thinking was, but that's where it came about.
That just sounds to me like you're very expressive with your face.
I'm something. I don't know what it is yet.
I'm something.
Yeah.
I'm something. I don't know what it is. That's hilarious.
But that's where it came from. And then when I was like trying to come up with, when I had this idea, and it kind of like sat around for a while in my head of like, man, it'd be really fun to do something like that, or it'd be whatever it was. I always was like, my biggest holdup was I didn't know what the name should be because I didn't know where it was going. And then I started seeing different like YouTube channels and different like influencer type, names and people, and it's like it doesn't even matter what the name is. Like it really doesn't. So I went with CrazyFaceUno, and it's what I use and when I'm gaming, or like if I have like the App Store or whatever, and you have to have like a username, it's like CrazyFaceUno. It's like CrazyFace number 1 instead of a letter. It's just Uno, or or I don't know. Yeah.
Well, so speaking of that, one of the funny things that happened is I got to meet your dog.
Oh, yes.
Which, I don't know if you talk about your dog on your podcast, but your dog is awesome.
Yeah, he is awesome. He's normally like he's my like co-host that doesn't ever say anything but kind of shakes his head and like snores every once in a while.
And like wags his tail, which for your dog means he wags his whole body.
Yes, exactly. Except for now that my wife's at home, he's in there with the wife. He like...
Right, because is she working from home?
Yeah.
Got it. So one of the things, can I talk about your dog, Mr. Hair?
Yeah, go for it.
Because I've actually talked about your dog to unknown people you do not know. Cause
I love it.
Like one of my favorite things.
He's the best.
Was that your dog is so happy.
Yes, he is.
And he's a three-legged dog.
Yep.
And I love this that he's just like, what? Like it just doesn't even faze him. Like there's no like lack of exuberance from this dog because he has 3 legs. And on the contrary, he's like happier than any dog I've met, I swear.
I know.
And one of my favorite stories was that he likes to chase ducks.
Oh yeah, he's so since you've been there, he's even caught a couple more. Like he's fast, and they're like stupid. No, he doesn't kill them. No. He just like he traps them and then like.
Yeah, this is potentially a hunting thing. I know that dogs have like ancestral memory for like what they're trained to do. I get that.
Yeah.
But like, so it could be an ancestral thing that his breed.
Sure.
Or a breed that he's, because there are a lot of blends and breeds now.
Yeah.
That their job was to, go and get the bird that was shot down and bring it to their master, not like masticate or chew on it.
Yeah.
But I love that your dog catches ducks.
Yeah, I don't
bite them.
I don't like it. He listens. Well, I don't know. There's one that he got a hold of with his mouth that he like held on to. I don't know how hard he was biting, but I was like, bro.
Kills when he lets them go, right?
No, he just has a couple feathers in his mouth.
But this is my favorite. That he like has it in his mouth, and then he brings it to you, and he's like now what? Like here, look what I did. And then you're like, put it down. And
they're not little ducks too. They're these like big fat like goose-looking duck things around here.
Oh my God.
Okay, I have a story for you. We're like totally off the rails here, but it's totally fine. Katie, listen to this story. We're
giving him a tooth hug.
Yeah.
Oh
we were walking him yesterday, and one of our neighbors on the other end of our apartment complex, she's out, her and her husband are out quite a bit, and so we stopped and just like, how are you guys doing? Like, wanted to pet Chance, like, cool. They have this little dog, it's like a little chihuahua, and you've been to our place, I don't know if you saw while you were here, but there's these massive iguanas, and I mean massive. They're
really big.
They're orange, and I mean, I'm like,
Florida.
I'm not exaggerating when I say like probably 25 pounds. There's a good possibility it's a little bit bigger, but they're not small things. And the big ones,
wild iguanas. Like we have squirrels in Minnesota, they have iguanas in Florida.
Yeah, and the big one, there's this one specifically. It's massive. It's huge. There's 2 of them, but there's one specifically that's extra big. And he's not afraid of anything. He doesn't move for anybody. He like turns his head and kind of looks at you, and like he'll eventually run. So my neighbor was telling us this story of like 7 months ago. Their little dog was out and like went and was like barking at the iguana, and the iguana grabbed a hold of him and drug him into the water. The iguana took a chihuahua into the water.
What?
And let it go, eventually got it back or whatever. But
the chihuahua survived?
Yeah, it's fine. It barks its head off every time it sees us. Can you believe that an iguana grabbed a hold of this dog, this chihuahua, and drug it into the water, into the lake?
That's amazing. And the chihuahua survived.
Yeah. Wow. I mean,
that's wild.
Yeah. It still blows my mind.
Catch and release policy.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah. That's why I'm more worried about him getting a hold of a duck, because our dog, Chance, because, I mean, he could injure it, kill it, whatever. And I'm like, I don't want that to happen. But the iguanas, usually the smaller ones are like scared. They, as soon as they see him, they're like, nah, I'm out of here, dude. We're gone. Like, they hit the trees, hit the water.
Chance has to weigh about 60 pounds?
He's 50. Solid 50 pounds.
He's a solid 50 pounds, so I don't know that iguana could get him, but goodness, he's definitely, I could see.
Well, they whip their tails. So I have a feeling that he would just get like bopped, but I mean he would lose with a fight with an iguana instantly, like even at 50 pounds. I still swear he would lose, and he's really not an aggressive guy. Like,
no, he's kind of a lover.
Yeah, he just wants to like hang out and chill and sleep. He sleeps all day long. Yeah.
To cuddle and then chill and then run a little and chase the ducks.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I love your dog. I had a really fun time hanging out with both you and your wife and the dog, of course, too.
Yeah.
It was really lovely.
I know. I wish we'd got to spend more time together, but you got to hang out with Chance more than you got to hang out with me.
Yeah. Well, Florida. Florida's a good place to visit.
Come on down.
Your family's like in Ohio?
Indiana.
Yeah. But your wife's family's here in Minnesota.
Correct. Yep. She grew up in like the Apple Valley area. Is where she grew up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So.
For people who don't know, that's just like a suburb of Minneapolis.
Yeah, it's like the suburbs of the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, over by the Mall of America. Hop, skip, and a jump.
Skip, and a jump. Everybody knows the Mall of America.
Yep. It's just the one thing you just throw out there. It's a commonality thing. Well,
I feel like Prince too, Minneapolis.
Oh yeah, of course, always. Yeah, definitely, for sure. Well, let's steer this ship back in the right direction. What do you say?
Yeah. You're the captain.
Looking specifically at like adolescent, middle school, high school time, what kind of a student were you?
In case the AP nerd thing was an indication, I was a bit of a nerd.
Sure.
Well, it's funny because I was a nerd, but I also was like a little bit. It was in sports, and then I was in dance line in high school before I went to the arts high school. So I wasn't like a social pariah nerd, but I definitely was a very studious student, and I
an outlier, if you will.
Yeah, I was an outlier. I got sequestered in 4th grade into like, I think it was one day a week or I don't know if it was an afternoon. It wasn't every day, but I was in like this group called Sage for a bit. That was like for anybody who tested high on some of the standardized tests. So I was a little bit of a nerd, which really set me up well to be with somebody like Marcus because he was silly smart. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, I like to learn. And my parents, being both teachers, I'm certain helped. It's not really, I can't really take responsibility. Like even when people, and sometimes I'll coach guys on how they are with women, and I'm like, look, find things about her that are beyond her looks to compliment her on, because intrinsically everybody knows that they're not really, yes, people can take care of themselves and be healthy and exercise and all of that, but we're not really responsible for how we look. That's mostly genetic.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I feel like a lot of what I got from my parents is, genetic. So I have them to credit for, having the brain I have or the way that I look and all of that. But the truth is I like to learn. I do like to learn. Yeah. And so, I was as a student, I was that, I was a good student and I liked to learn and probably had a little bit of a people pleaser too in me.
Sure.
Being a third kid,
Yeah.
Being wanting attention maybe or whatever. And then when I went to college, so,
I'm gonna freeze you. We're gonna stay in high school. So I'm gonna push that one down the line because you made a comment. And it leads into my follow-up question, which was, how would you describe your relationship like with your family, with your parents? You had 3 siblings. Something for me that, I've talked about this on the podcast before, but that always blew my mind. It wasn't until, I don't know, out of college even, that I realized that like a sibling didn't mean that you were like best friends with them. Which for me, I grew up as an only child most of my life. I have a stepbrother and sister that came along a little bit later in life. And, but I didn't live with them. I never have had that kind of relationship. And so I had teammates when I worked at the Invisible Children, the nonprofit. And I had 2 teammates that had like 6 siblings, or like one of 6. And I was like, whoa, what's that like? Like you have so many. And this was the first time I ever learned of like, oh, well, I'm super close with this, brother, but like, I don't know, me and my sisters aren't that close, or vice versa, whatever it was. And I just found that really fascinating. So I'm always interested in like people's relationships with their family and like what that looked like, and parents, siblings, whatever.
Yeah. So got it. It's funny because we often as humans like we are like long for what we don't have, and so I was third of four, and my family was a bit unconventional in that my older two siblings were adopted, and so my parents in their 30s, which is late for that generation. My parents, like I said, are 81 and 79, so they were born in the late 30s, early 40s, and then I was born in the 70s. They were in their 30s when they started having kids, whereas most people were having kids in their 25, 27, back in the 70s. And so they adopted two because they weren't getting pregnant, and then they got pregnant with me and had me and my younger brother, Dave. Mm-hmm. And so there's four of us, but two are adopted, and then two are biological.
Very cool.
And so that provided, oddly, some data for me as a curious person, as somebody who likes to learn, around what is, when I first heard nature versus nurture as, I don't even know, probably junior high or early high school, I remember thinking, oh, my family's a great case study for this, because what is nature, what is nurture?
Yeah.
And it's really alarming how many different personality traits really feel like, and habits feel like they're actually from a genetic component. And, as somebody who meditates and has studied psychology and everything, one of the things I really like to talk to people about or look at is that, and I think Russell Brand is who I credit, but I'm sure he wasn't the first to say it. He just is popular and has a podcast I listen to from time to time.
Yeah.
He said, look, you're running a program either way. Either
Sure.
It's unconscious or conscious. So you're either running the unconscious program of your family genetics, of your environment and all of that, or you're running a conscious program based on like, hey, I don't like this thing that I do. I don't like this habit. I don't like this way of being. I don't like this way of reacting to something. I don't like this mindset, this emotional state, these thoughts I'm having. So I'm going to change it because I'm running a conscious program. So either way, you're running a program.
Yeah.
And so I see some of the genetic programming that's different between, and my older brother and sister they're not related. They were two different families. We're all Caucasian. What's interesting is my brother Dave and I were both the biological kids, both brown-eyed, brown-haired, but blonde when we were kids.
Sure.
My dad's blue-eyed, brown hair. My mom's brown-eyed, brown hair. My mom's more Eastern European, like Yugoslavia, Ukraine, Russian and Serbian. My dad is Norwegian, kind of. I say he's a Viking because he's like built like a Viking. He's very barrel-chested, big guy. I'm like, you're not like a Norwegian or Scandinavian. You're a Viking, Dad. He's like, yeah, probably. But my older siblings are, blue-eyed and both left-handed, and my brother Dave and I are both right-handed. So that's kind of an interesting little odd,
cool.
Genetic recessive, because both, I think, left-handedness and blue-eyed are recessive traits.
Yeah.
And then, like, my older siblings, like my sister was a good athlete, but she was good at swimming. My brother Mike, not an athlete, great mechanic, pretty smart,
Sure.
but not necessarily the best student, but is really good at fixing things and like smart about it, in a way that I'm not. And then I was book smart like my mom. My brother Dave was a little like more of a hybrid, but like, so am I close to my siblings now? Well, oddly, I'm closest to the middle brother who's adopted, Mike, in part because over the last several years as adults, he and I just got closer.
Yeah.
In part because he was the only one that could like get off of work, had a flexible enough work schedule, and like could had the resources or even the flights, like I think he had miles, or one of his friends gave him miles to come out and be with me when Marcus died. Like, he was the only one. My mom had come out and then had to fly back because my dad had unfortunately slipped and fallen on the ice and hit his head, and so she had to fly back to Minnesota to be with him, which was just like a whole crazy stressful time for me because my partner just died, and then my dad is in the hospital. I'm like, Jesus, I can't, like, this is just so much.
Stop.
But so
Stop
Mike
it.
was there with stop it, like, enough. Can I uncle, like,
you got
so
me.
Mike and I you got me. Mike and I are super close. My sister Tina and I were close growing up, but not as close over the last several years, and she had a hard time with my relationship with Marcus. She didn't really, approve of him, which is interesting. And so even though she and I still talk, we have not, like, gotten to the point where we don't talk or anything. It's still, we're not as close as we once were, and that's okay. She's a lovely human. We just aren't as close as we once were.
Yeah.
And then my younger brother Dave and I are probably, close-ish, but he has a wife and a kid, and he's really consumed with that. And so we have nice talks when we talk, but the one I'm closest to is Mike, who was my bully growing up. And that's one of the pieces I talk about, is like power of forgiveness. Is like, if I were holding on to that as like, I'm going to be forever angry at you about that, like, we're kids, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, no, like, of course,
we grow up, we change, like, it's okay.
We grow up, we change, and it's okay. And it's like, I was probably annoying. I was probably an annoying, singing, cute little perfect student, to an older brother. He's like, oh, yuck, you know what I mean? Like, ugh. So it's so annoying. She's cute and like singing at all the family functions. Stop it. You're like, I kind of get it in a weird way,
Yeah, exactly.
And so I can just kind of like, I don't know. I did. It wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. In my grad school, there was a lot of like encouragement around like forgiveness of like some of our most challenging relationships. We had like projects on that, so it was very much like work on your own stuff like as part of your growth. But if you do plan to go on to be a marriage and family therapist, which a lot of my classmates did, or a coach, which I do, one of the best ways to do that is to have your own experience of what it really is to forgive, and what it really is to like change your patterns, change your habits, work through your own stuff, so that you're in a position to be able to help other people.
It's relating to people stuff. And kind of understanding that process and the different feelings throughout it.
Yep, but we're very different. Some families have like, oh, they're all scientists, or they're all this or that. Nope, we're all different. We have
That's cool.
Jobs that we do. I'm the only one that moved far away. They all stayed in Minnesota, and then I came back 2 years ago. And so does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
It would be a very different life if I was an only child. I think that my parents would have put way more pressure on me to be like who they thought I should be, or even just like to be, kind of like, I probably would have stayed in Minnesota, but because I had these other siblings that were older than me and Mike was a bully, I had this sort of itch to like go further away and explore the world. Yeah.
But I feel that way, and I was an only child. Well, and maybe it's the reverse, type of thing. Like, I did experience some of that, like, I don't know, pressure? Sheltered. Not even sheltered. It's just like, I felt that expectation as a child, but like also, I don't know. I think I was the only one, so I got all the attention from mom. I got all the attention from dad. Like, I didn't have anybody to blame anything on. You know what I mean? So like, there's all these different things. Like, I was a mama's boy growing up. Like, not in a bad way, not in like maybe the most stereotypical way, but like, I don't know, like, I was. And I think as I got older, I'm like, man, I got to get the heck out of here. I got to find my own life, and like figure what that looks like and find that freedom and discover myself. So I don't know, but I can totally see what you're saying. And I can also see it like from my perspective of like, well, I flew the coop, and like haven't been back since. Like really, and different feelings about that, but yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because that was part of my thing with flying the coop, was to go find myself. Yeah. And I attributed it to, like, one of my jokes growing up was like, I can't go anywhere with my father and not have somebody know him. Like, everywhere in public we go.
Well, and I was the same way.
You had the same thing?
Well, my dad was a pastor growing up.
Oh.
So
yeah.
For for 18 years he's since left the ministry, but so kind of the same thing, I always had this unrealistic expectation as to who I was supposed to be. And I was always supposed to like try to fit into that box, into who, people thought I should be because of who my dad was and who my mom was and all this. And so it's interesting because as I get older, I'm still fighting some of those things that were, I don't know, just like I'm a people pleaser, and so
I don't know if you relate to this, but I felt like any screw up, if I would screw up, it would reflect badly on my parents, and that made me nervous. I think it made me want to do more, but then it made me feel confined. So then going far away made me feel like, okay, I can I'm trying not to swear on your podcast, Shane.
You can swear. You can swear. It's cool.
I can fuck up, and it won't get back to my parents because I'm just like still a young, like 18, 19 when I moved to San Diego.
Yeah.
I need to be able to do that. And so you're like, you're a people pleaser, but you also were like, I need to go out in the world.
Yeah.
And figure out who I am. And
yeah, that's the
like,
thing.
I have the freedom to screw up a little bit and not be
right.
like, oh, get back to my dad and it be a whole thing, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a lot of similarities within that. But the thing that's really interesting for me, at least, is that I'm also enough of a like, don't tell me what to do kind of person. And I don't know when that came along, but like, don't tell me what to do. Like, I'll make my own choices. And I don't know exactly when. I have a feeling it was probably, I mean, I think college really fostered that in the friends that I was around, but I was always pushing the boundaries. Like in our friends group, you know, if you ever go back, and if anybody listening wants to go back and listen to some of podcasts from last year, I was able to get back together with some of my old college friends, my best friends, the group of guys that I really like got to hang out with a lot and spend a lot of time with. And you know, just kind of talking, it's just funny the things they kind of come out and talk about. Like, I never realized we really did push the envelope. We pushed the boundaries at our college. We went to a super conservative Christian school, and we made them think about a lot of things, you know, whether that was, hey, we're going to stick up for the poor, for the LGBTQ plus community, for, you know, and we're going to make you think about those things and challenge you to, are you right? Or, you know, like, maybe you should think differently, or maybe you should have a different perspective. And so we really pushed back, and I think that fits who I am. And I think that was really a coming of age time for me, of when I can pinpoint specifically the moment when I think my world kind of changed, and it's specifically in like thinking for myself and on my own. And and I think that's really carried on. So it's this, I'm constantly at battle with myself of pleasing people and also sticking up for myself, and those clash really hard for me, because I feel guilty when I stick up for myself, because I'm also not pleasing that person the way I would want to. Does that make sense?
Interesting. It does.
I'm pretty self-aware of it, so, you know, it's just something I have to, like, sometimes I have to allow my emotions to settle down and think with a clear head. But it's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you've experienced, the awareness is part of what is like part of the necessary stages of development. For
for sure.
Shift in patterns or whatever.
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
Good for you for being aware. I mean, did you go to college in Indiana?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Good for you for like pushing the envelope at your Christian school.
Yeah, we definitely did. I would love, and I haven't done it yet. It's on my list, you know. I've got lots of people I know, but I'd love to have some of our old professors on just to kind of talk about, you know, those different things. And one of my buddies, like, he still works at the school now, and it's one of those things that like you would have never guessed he would have necessarily done that. Out of all of us, he's probably the one to do it. But you know, it's interesting to hear some of the things like, no, we really made an impact at that school. You know, I see some of the things that we really pushed against, and I see how they are today, and how we made a difference. Totally. And that's kind of cool, you know.
Yeah. Quick question: are the professors pretty much required to be Christian to teach there?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I had this notion growing up, because I was around, like, my parents are Methodist, so it was pretty mild as far as the religious, you know, stuff. And I was baptized Serbian Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox. Okay. But that was more of like a cultural thing than something that like was like a religious, like, weekly. The
Orthodoxy,
church
right?
We went to was Methodist. Yeah, Orthodox. Yeah, it was more of a cultural thing.
My dad was pastor. Are you familiar with Church of God denomination? Yes. So it's like a branch off of the Methodist, I believe, side of things. Yeah. So probably strict, right? Similar. No, yeah, it's a Protestant Christian church, but there's different levels to that.
Still some dogma, different levels.
Well, there's like, a lot of dogma, but yeah.
But like, sure. It's funny, because I had this idea that like people who were believers, like, especially for some reason Catholic, I felt like they were just like staunch, like they just never had any kind of wavering. And I met a priest. I've known, you know, several priests over the years, but I met one recently, maybe last year, through like just one of like just a meetup group I was going to called Miracle Morning that my friend organized, and it's a really cool group, just like talking about different things people are working for in their lives or different practices, in the mornings based on that book that was like Miracle Morning, these different things you can do in the morning to set your day up to be great.
Yeah.
And this priest shared that he had like some crisis of faith and stuff.
Yeah.
And like was a career priest, like 20 plus years
in.
And it really struck me that, just how erroneous my idea was that people in like clergy people never have crisis of faith. And like the only reason I say it in regard to your school and the professors is like, I bet some of them might be willing to talk to you, and even their own experience of being a professor at a Christian school. And it's like, I have times where I question my faith, and I come back to it, or I have this career, and that was part of his thing. I was surprised that he was like, "Wow, it's my career."
Right.
I was like, "Oh, I just assumed it was a calling, and you just had to believe constantly, or else you couldn't do it."
Yeah.
Like, totally naive.
And that is a thing, like, no. Though. That is a thing. I mean, but it's different within, being a priest or within the Catholic Church and that side of things too.
How much it affects your lifestyle, for sure. Whereas Methodist minister can get married and have children and all that stuff. And
but I think and
you don't get,
it's
ostracized or whatever.
It's often though very much an identity within people, and something that you've built in. And this is something that I don't believe the same things I used to believe anymore, Katie. I don't know if we've talked about this, but like I don't call myself a Christian anymore. Like there's a bunch of different things. But long story short, or part of this is, a priest, they have their own opinions, and they don't always agree with the different things that are canonized in the Bible and all these different things. But they still, when they're on that pedestal, they're gonna preach that, and it's different, which is kind of interesting. I think we could compare the Protestant and the Catholic Church. There's tons of things to compare, but it's just interesting, that world. It's a whole other world.
It's a whole other world.
Yeah.
It's funny, I do talk about it in my show, which eventually I'd love to even share just a video clip or read it for you sometime.
Yeah.
The 20-minute show, but I talk about that. Like part of my experience with Marcus transitioning was I felt him. I felt like communication almost with him.
Yeah.
And I explain it more in depth in my show, which I'd love to, like I said, love to share with you. But I actually do take a little sidebar to go, I've never identified myself as like a believer, even though I dabbled and I was around Methodists growing up, and I was involved with stuff, and I dabbled in, not just Methodist, but was around Catholic people and some of their events and some of their services, and
absolutely.
And Buddhism, of course, as a meditation person, or yoga, different things, and like in ways I kind of find it enviable, people that just have this like unwavering belief. I'm like the enviable conviction that they know what happens when you die. Like I didn't have that.
Yeah, I can tell you.
I had this very personal experience of Marcus dying and feeling like I could feel him, as he transitioned, and not having any expectation that would be my experience.
Yeah. Wow. We've got, man, Katie, there's so much we could talk about. We're at 82 minutes right now.
So we got to wrap it up.
I'm gonna wrap it up because I want to have plenty of time for you to answer the last 4 questions.
Yes.
So I'm gonna dig in. These are the intense questions. We're kind of skipping over college, so you're gonna have to come back on sometime. It's just the way it's gonna be.
Okay, I partied a lot. Just kidding. Such a good little student.
All right, you ready for the final 4? Final 4 questions
here. Yes, I'm ready for the final 4. All right. My favorite curse word.
Hey, what is it? Go ahead. No.
Fuck. It's such a versatile word.
I know, right? It's so great.
You can make a whole sentence out of it. Fuck the fucking fuckers.
Oh, you're killing me. I love it. This is great.
Okay, 4 questions.
On that note, what would you say you're most proud of today? I told you, I'm coming for you now.
Okay, so, so one of the things about questions like this that I like to do is I like to say like the first thing that comes up, the first thing that comes to the surface, like the first thing, and I read, Malcolm Gladwell's Blink or whatever, that was with, First Instinct. So here's the thing, that I really want to be here. Like the losing someone like Marcus how significant he was to me, how much we still loved each other after 9 years. You know, we weren't anywhere near breaking up.
Yeah.
That feels like it threatens one's will to live. And I say it that way because, you know, I don't want to raise any red flags for anybody that is concerned about my personal safety. But and it was such an intense year, the last year of his life, of us, you know, trying to kind of save his life. And I say kind of because like we couldn't overcome the damage that had been done to his body, but we kept surviving for so many months with all these different, you know, infections, and then it would clear, and then he'd have a surgery, and he'd wake up, and it's like, oh, he just keeps surviving, so maybe he's going to get better. And just being on dialysis would be a dream after this experience where he just was like close to dying all the time. And so after that experience, the fact that I like want to be here, and that I'm like generally like my baseline is like actually pretty happy and grateful, like that feels like it feels like a fucking accomplishment.
Yeah, for sure. No, I get it.
I'm still engaging in life, and I've found like joy and gratitude.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing to be proud of, but like, okay, how about this? Something slightly more tangible. My parents, as I've described them, are lovely people, but that final year of his life, I felt kind of abandoned by them because I'd asked them if we could move to Duluth to stay with them while Marcus was sick and in and out of hospital, and they said no for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
And look, I get it. I'm a grown adult. Like I should be taking care of myself, but I really kind of wanted them to like just be there for me. Even though I was planning to like take care of all of Marcus's needs, I wasn't expecting them to like take a shift on like bringing him a meal or something when he was unable to get out of bed. I felt really sad and abandoned by that. And then in my process of grief, I really kind of, and they did apologize, and it was challenging for the first 6 months especially.
Sure.
But I've worked, as we would say in my grad school, I've worked my process of forgiveness with them, and so I'm closer than ever with my parents.
That's awesome.
And that part of it was like, I don't want to lose them too.
Yeah.
I just lost Marcus. I don't want to lose them too. And we had some very intense conversations, you know, around it all. And I did say my piece around like what that was like for me to not have them there for me when I needed them the most, you know?
Yeah.
But that's probably one of my most proud things is that I was able to
reconcile.
Forgive and reconcile with them in light of this really challenging, devastating life experience, and have this beautiful connected relationship with them.
Good for you.
If I'd held on to the grief, to the anger, to the disappointment I felt, I wouldn't have that relationship. But instead, I was part of my process was to feel those feelings and to also just kind of empathize with them. They were scared too.
Yeah,
they were scared of what that would be for me. They didn't want to have to watch me go through that. They didn't want to watch him die. They were scared too. And being able to understand that really helped me in my process of forgiveness. So those are two. I gave you two. Price of one.
Perfect. That's fine. Do you ever think about your legacy?
Question 2. Is that question 2?
Yeah. Do you ever think about your legacy?
I do.
Just a time check. We have 2.5 minutes left.
I might be verbose. So my legacy, I thought for a long time it'd be songwriting, and it might be, but I sort of feel like my legacy, hopefully, I hope my legacy would be to have a positive impact on people, on how to deal with loss and grief and sadness and challenging emotion, and find gratitude and gifts and love and compassion and creativity, and transmute sadness into creativity and connection and love. That's what I would like my legacy to be.
I love it. You did great. That was 45 seconds. That was great.
I'm trying.
Two more. Question 3. What do you look forward to most in your future? Do you have any goals or ambitions?
Oh my God, too many. I have too many goals.
We can skip over that one. What do I
look forward to? I can just say one thing or whatever.
Sure, go for it.
If that's one of your staple questions. Well, okay, I'll be super like pedantic about it. I want to become a better sailor. I've been sailing kind of for 20 years.
I love it. That's awesome.
As a crew on somebody's boat, but I just want to get better at it because it's been sort of sporadic. So I want to do it more, and I want to get better at it, and it's something that fully engages me physically and mentally and emotionally, and so I love that. So I want to get better at sailing.
That's awesome.
My life goals.
Last question. You ready?
Yes.
Looking back, what advice would you tell little Katie?
Oh, Jesus. Invest in Apple stock. People of how, like, girls just, like, put all this paper route money into Apple stock.
I love it. Katie, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it so much. You got to come back on. Can I hold your feet to the fire and say you got to come back on?
I would love to come back on.
Let's do it.
I mean, there's more to talk about? No. You've been a delight. Thank you so much, Shane.
Absolutely.
What a lovely host and interviewer you are. Thank you, my dear.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for being such a fun guest. We have so much to talk about. We'll get to it one of these days.
Yeah.
All right.
There's more.
Thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate it. Thank you again for listening and engaging with us. Go check out CrazyFaceUno.com. We love ya. Peace.